Today I want to learn about playground rules.
With the help of Mrs. George and Mrs. Avalar, we're going to learn the rules of using the twisty slide. Watch how Mrs. George approaches the twisty slide. She grabs on with both hands and checks to make sure there's no students coming down. She takes one step at a time. Remember, it could be tricky to climb those big stairs. Once she reaches the top, she's going to peer over to see if she sees any students on the twisty slide. Nope, she gave me the okay. So she checks again just to be sure. Okay, it's time to go down the slide. Did you notice what Mrs. Avalar was doing? She was waiting at the bottom patiently until Mrs. George was done. Now that Mrs. George has checked the slide, she is ready to go down. She sits sitting on her bottom with her hands at her side, feet first. She is ready to go. Here she comes. She's all done. Notice how carefully she gets off the slide and moves away for the next person. Great job, Mrs. George. Thanks for showing us how to use the slide. Now take a moment to review the slide expectations with your teacher. How should you use the slide? Using your own words, what should you do when using the slide? Now that you've reviewed with your teacher, I want to remind you that the twisty slide is not to be used during morning recess. Next, you'll see how Miss Clemick and Mrs. Zibelman use safety when using the monkey bars. Pay close attention to what Mrs. Zibelman does upon approaching the monkey bars that Miss Clemick is on. As Miss Clemick is crossing the monkey bars, Mrs. Zibelman is approaching. She suddenly stops because she realizes that this is a dangerous spot. When coming to monkey bars, please make sure you stop and not cross underneath while somebody is using them. Next, you'll see how Mrs. Bishop uses the hand trolley. Just a special note, this hand trolley is not to be used during the morning recess, so please make sure you stay away from it during this time. When using the hand trolley, you hold on with two hands. You do not run and jump on it, you just very carefully grab with two hands and move by shifting your body. Next, you will see how Mrs. Bishop, Mrs. Avalar, Mrs. Schultz, and Mrs. Miller take turns using the seesaw. Please pay close attention to the different things that they do to make sure they are safe using the seesaw. Upon approaching the seesaw, you will place one hand on the seesaw, like Mrs. Avalar and Mrs. Bishop just did. Carefully step over, and then you may begin. Notice Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Schultz are counting. They are counting 20 times up and down. Once you have finished, you very carefully leave your hands on the seesaw until the other person places their hands on the seesaw. At that moment, the next group may begin using the seesaw. Let's take a closer look at mounting and dismounting the seesaw. Notice here, Mrs. Bishop still has her hand on the seesaw as Mrs. Miller places her hand on the seesaw, ready to step on. This is very important. Please make sure that you place your hand on the seesaw and wait till the other places their hand on the seesaw before letting go. Let's take a moment to review what we have learned about using the seesaw. Please pause the video and review with your teacher how you should use the seesaw. Now that you've reviewed with your teacher, I want to make one special announcement about using the seesaw. This is not to be used during morning recess. If you would like to review our SWIB's playground expectations, here is the poster hanging up in the hallway next to the playground door. Let's review them. It's a Zone 2 green, obey the rules of the playground, which we just went over. Go to an adult on the playground when there's a problem. Dress for the weather as the adult tells you. Line up quietly, Zone 1. Obey the 3 whistle rule. Keep hands and feet to themselves. Include others in activity. And finally, taking care of things, use playground equipment properly.